Pagi pre. Karon mo.
Gameplay na?
Good day sir. We are the group 7. We will talk about the Philippines century hens. Next slide. Next slide pre. History does not record in its annal any lasting domination exercised by one people over another of different race, of diverse usage and custom of opposite and divergent ideals. History kuno wala gis sulat or gihimo para mag-dominate og usa ka tawo or lahi nga paggamit sa mga idea. So one of two had to yield and succumb. Either the foreigner was driven out as happened in the case of Carthaginians in Moors and French in Spain, or else these autochthons had gave way and perished as was the case with the inhabitants of the New World, Australia and New Zealand. Ang isa sa duha ka kay kinahanglan jud nga mosoko kay bisan asa sa duha gi gi pareha sa Carthaginians ang mga Moor o ang France og Spain kay dili man ototon niini ang kinahanglan nga surrender or mawala pareha sa kapuyo sa New World, Australia ug New Zealand. One of the longest domination was of the Moors in Spain, which lasted 7 centuries. But even though the conquerors live in a country gradually emerged like the island in the midst of the Great Saracen inundation, and in spite of chivalrous spirit, the gallantry, and the religious toleration of the caliphs, they were finally driven out after a bloody and stubborn conflicts which formed Spanish nation and created in the Spain of the 15th and 17th centuries. Isa sa pinakadugay nga dominations kay ang mga Moors sa Espanya nga midugay og 7 ka siglo yun ug bisan nga ang mga mananakop gapuyo sa Spain ug pag-uman sa pipila ka mga panghitabo, ang Spain na create adtong 15th and 16th centuries. Next. The existence of a foreign body within another endowed with strength and activity is contrary to all natural and ethical laws. Science teaches us that it is either assimilated, destroys the organism, is eliminated, or becomes incested. Incestment of a conquering people is impossible, for it signifies complete isolation, absolute inertia, debility in a conquering element. Incestment thus means the thumb of the foreign invader. Now, applying these considerations to the Philippines, we must conclude, as a deduction from all we have said, that is, if their population be not assimilated to the Spanish nation, if the dominators do not enter into the spirit of their inhabitants, if equitable laws and free and liberal reforms do not make each forget that they belong to different races, or if both peoples be not amalgamated to constitute one mass, socially and politically homogeneous, that is not harassed by opposing tendencies and antagonistic ideas and interests. Someday, the Philippines will fatally and infallibly declare themselves independent. To this law of destiny can be opposed neither Spanish patriotism nor the love of the Filipinos for Spain, nor the doubtful future of dismemberment and intestine strife in the islands themselves. Necessity is the most powerful divinity the world knows, A necessity is the resultant of physical forces set in operation by ethical forces. So Rizal felt that it was time to remind the Spain that the circumstances that assured in the French Revolution could have a telling effect for her in the Philippines. We have seen and statistics prove that it is impossible to exterminate the Filipino people. And even were it possible, what interest would Spain have in destruction of the inhabitants of a country she cannot populate or cultivate, whose climate is to a certain extent disastrous to her? What good would the Philippines be without the Filipinos? Quiet otherwise, under her colonial system and the transitory character of the Spaniards who got to the colonies. A colony is so much the more useful and productive to her as it possesses inhabitants and wealth. Moreover, in order to destroy the 6 million Malays, even supposing them to be in their infancy and that they have never learned to fight and defend themselves, Spain would have to sacrifice at least a part of her populations. This we commend to the notice of the partisans of colonial exploitation. But nothing of this kind can happen. The menace is that when the education and liberty necessary to human existence are denied by Spain to the Filipinos, then they will seek enlightenment abroad, behind the mother country's back, or they will secure by hope or by crop some advantages in their own country. With the result that the opposition of purblind and paritic politicians will not only be futile but even prejudicial, because it will convert motives for love and gratitude into resentment and hatred. Because of such laws, the Philippines population decreased dramatically, poverty became more rampant than ever, and farmlands were left to wither. The family as a unit of society was neglected, and overall, every aspect of the life of the Filipinos was retarded. Next point.
Hatred and repressment on the side, mistrust and anger on the other, will finally result in a violent and terrible collision, especially when there exists element interested in having disturbance, so that they they may get something in the excitement, demonstrate their mighty power, foster limitation and reclamation, or employ violent measures. It is to be expected that the government will triumph and generally severe punishment, either to teach a stern lesson in order to vaunt strength, or even revenge upon the vanish and spell of excitement and terror that danger cause it. And an irreversible con- concomitant of these catastrophes is the accumulation of acts of injustice committed against the innocent and peaceful inhabitants, so that the Filipino have not about injustice. They're not very very approval in justice. Hence, the great precedent and fine tax that should be extended in colonizing countries, in fact that the government regards the colonies general and other colonial office in particular as training schools, contributors to stability and fulfillment of the great law that the colonies sooner or later declare themselves independent. Such is the descent down which the people are precipitated, precipitated in proportion as they are battered in blood and drenched in tears and gall. The colony, if it is a vitality, learns how to struggle and perfect itself in fighting, while the mother country, whose colonial life depend upon peace and submission of the subject, is constantly weakened, and even though she makes heroic effort as her number is less, she has only fictitious existence She finally perished. She is like the rich voluntary accustomed to be waited upon a crowd of servants toiling and planting for him, and who, one on the day his slaves refuse him obedience, as he does not live by his own effort, must die. Reprisal, wrongs, and suspicions on one part and one the other's sentiment, patriotism, and liberty, which is aroused is this instant conflict, insurrection, and uprising operate to generalize the movement, and one of two people must succumb. The struggle will brief, for its whole amount of slavery much more cruel than death for the people and to dishonorable loss prestige for the dominator. One of the people must succumb. Spain, from the number of inhabitants, from the condition of her army and navy, from the distance she is situated from the island, for her scanty knowledge of them, in struggling against the people whose love and good will she have enlightened, will necessarily have to give way if she does not wish to risk not only her other position and future in Africa, but also her very independence in Europe. All this at the cost of bloodshed and crime after mortal conflicts, murders, conflagration, military execution, famine, and misery. The Spaniard is gallant and patriotic and sacrifices everything. In favorable moments for his country's good, he he has integrity of his soul. The Filipino loves his country no less, and although he is quicker, more peaceful, and with difficulty stirred up, when he is once aroused, he does not hesitate, and for him, the struggle means death to one or the other combatant. He has all meekness and all tenacity and ferocity of his carabao. Climate effect depends in the same way that it does quadrupeds.
The terrible lessons and the hard teachings that these conflicts will have afforded the Filipinos will operate to improve and strengthen their ethical nature. The Spain of the 15th century was not the Spain of the 8th. With their bitter experience, instead of intestine conflicts of some islands against others, as is generally feared, they will extend mutual support, like shipwrecked persons when they reach an island after a fearful night of storm. Nor may it be said that we shall partake of the fate of the small American republics. They achieved their independence easily, and their inhabitants are animated by a different spirit from what Filipino are. So, tungod ato mga conflicts nila, mga suffering, ang mga Filipinos can afford to operate and improve their strength and sa kuan ethical nature. If the Philippines secure their independence after heroic and stubborn conflicts, they can rest assured that neither England nor Germany nor France and still less Holland will dare to take up what Spain has been unable to hold. Within a few years, Africa will completely absorb the attention of the Europeans, and there is no sensible nation which, in order a secure group of poor hostile islands, will neglect the immense territory offered by the dark continent, untouched, undeveloped, and almost undefended. England has enough colonies in the Orient and is not going to risk losing her balance. She is not going to sacrifice her Indian empire for the poor Philippine Islands. If she had entertained such an intention, she would have restored Manila in 1763, but would have kept some point in the Philippines, when she might gradually expand. Moreover, what need has John Bull, the trader, to exhaust himself for the Philippines, when he is already Lord of the Orient, when he has there Singapore, Hong Kong, and Shanghai? It is probable that England will look favorable upon independence of the Philippines, for it will open their ports to her and afford greater freedom to her commerce. Furthermore, there exist in the United Kingdom tendencies and opinions to the effect that she already has too many colonies, that they are harmful, that they greatly weaken the sovereign country. Holland is sensible and will be content to keep the Moluccas and Java. Sumatra offers her a greater future than the Philippines, who sees that cost have sinister omen for Dutch expedition. Holland proceed with great caution in Sumatra and Borneo, from fear of losing everything.
Very likely, the Philippines will defend with impressively valor the liberty secured at the price of so much blood and sacrifice. With the new men that will spring from their soil and will be recollection of their past, they will perhaps strive to enter freely upon the wide road of progress, and all will labor together to strengthen their fatherland both internally and externally with the same enthusiasm with, with which a youth falls again to tilling of the land of his ancestors, so long wasted and abandoned through the neglect of those who have withheld it from him. Then the mines will be made to give up their gold to relieving distress, iron for weapon, copper, lead, and coal. Perhaps the country will revive the maritime and mercantile life for which the island are fated by their nature. Ability and instinct, and once more free like the bird that leaves its cage, like the flowers and fall to the air, will recover the pristine virtues that are gradually dying out and will again become addicted to peace, cheerful, happy, joyous, and hospitable. So, never, never, nevertheless, it is not well to trust to accident, for there is sometimes an incomparable and impressible logic in the working of history, permanently peoples as well as government are subject to it. So for me, the statement state the analysis on how Rizal create his prediction in the future during his time. He based his prediction on what is in the past and on the present. I think it is a part of being an intelligent of his carefully analyze what might happen in the future. So, therefore, we repeat and we will ever repeat, will this is time that is better to keep peace with the desire of the people than to give away before them. The former begets sympathy and love, that latter contempt the younger, since it is necessary to grant 6 million Filipinos their rights, so they may be in Pax Spaniard. Let the government grant this right freely and spontaneously without the damaging reservation, without irritating mistrust. We shall never tire of repeating this, while array of hope is left us. For we prepare the unpleasant task of the need someday, saying to the mother country, Spain, we have spent our youth in serving the interests or the interests of our country. We have looked the sea, we have expanded the whole light of our intelligence, of our favor and enthusiasm of our heart in working to the good of what the state to draw from the lens of love a liberal policy that will ensure the peace of native land, that the way or loyal be unconditionally island faith. So has remained deep and rough in the pride, has pursued the fatal course and accused us of the being traitor merely those because we love our country, because we tell them the truth and hate all kinds of injustice. Why what does do you which is to tell which country we need about the result of our effort, must we say that the sins of the you have everything you future hope, peace, family, since the service of exhausted all the resources of hope, all the dissolution of desire. It also takes residue. We cannot use the blood from our veins and strengthen. Let us arm Spain. Spain must be song that the Filipinas that now can for the wars, and that if wishes to be saved, she must redeem herself. So we must learn and do something. So we must learn and do something about what Jose Rizal and other national heroes did for our country. So don't let the great people take over for our rights. Stand and kill the poverty. Share your knowledge to the people and to because and educate is the best tool.